I'm Sifu Slim, and I happen to have an arm and a hand in my hands, and it's an aging athlete. And we're doing some rehabilitation in the form of massage and making someone feel good on a structural level, on a molecular level. Even their DNA is responding to this. The science, which brings us to the man on my right, we'll go into in a minute, even attests to that. So today we're here to talk about the aging athlete. And what does an aging athlete mean? How old is an aging athlete? If you're a Russian gymnast back in the 70s, starting when you're 5 years old, can you imagine if you did 20 years of hardcore training, 5-6 hours a day, you're only 25 and you're an aged athlete according to gymnastics. So we're going to talk about that. But on my left, I happen to have the hand of someone who's done many, many massages for herself and for her clients. And she is Kelly Knowles from, where do you hail from?
Well, Santa Barbara now.
Santa Barbara now, and originally?
Oregon.
Oregon, okay. Good, wholesome area to come from. I'm from New Jersey, and he's from Chicago. This is Dick Wullaert to my right. He's an engineer by training, PhD from Stanford. Age 70.
I'll be 78 next month.
Next month, 78, and he's from Chicago, rough and tumble Chicago. I'm from rough and tumble New Jersey, only for about 10 years, and then I moved to the country, so I'm similar to the Oregonian. But we know a little bit about rough and tumble. Do you know anything about rough and tumble, Kelly? No. Okay, so we do have one wholesome part of the group here. So I'm massaging her hand to make it feel like it can go out and do things. She came here today for this interview, Kelly did, on her bicycle. So that's what I call an athlete who's even going mobile to go to an interview, transporting herself by a bicycle. Tell us about your day so far and what you think so far of the process and what we're talking about the aging athletes.
Fascinated with that you've already written 2 books about the subject, and I love learning, and I deal with aging athletes every day. So I'm here out of interest of your subject very much.
What is the age group of the people you work on?
14-year-old girls that are in a lot of pain from their swim workouts to I have clients in their 90s that are just wanting to go out there and golf. So my oldest client is 92.
Is there any one common theme that you see in the athletes of all ages? Is it the hard work? Is it too many hours? Is it?
It's the passion that they want to be running in their 70s. They want to be active and doing golf in their 80s and 90s. So it's that they love the sport, and all their injuries don't seem to set them back, even though most of us are limping if we continue on into our golden years.
Wonderful. And over to my right, Dick Wullaert, going to be 78 and still plays basketball with people in their 20s. I don't know anyone else in America. I'm sure they're out there. Do you know anybody else in their 70s still doing it?
Well, there's a couple guys at the Y that are actually older than me, but they play their own separate little slow game.
Okay.
I like to play with the younger guys.
Okay. So you're still playing, running, and cutting at age almost 78.
Yeah, right.
Wow, that's fascinating. Do you have any secrets of why you're still able to do that?
I just don't think that I can't do it. It's real simple.
So you haven't gone in for hip and knee replacement?
No.
No.
I played, when I was 14, I actually fell on this knee and got a little bump there. And the only thing that did is sort of kept me out of the Army.
Which at the time was a good thing or not?
Yeah, because there was a draft at that time.
Okay.
But then about 5 or 6 years ago, I tore the meniscus in this knee. And I thought about an operation, but I'm a researcher, so I read up and found that the success rate of knee operations wasn't that great. And if you didn't change your body posture and your muscle and stuff, you're going to do it again. Mm-hmm. So I went through physical therapy over at the Page Center there. Mm-hmm. And after about 6 months of that, I was back playing again, never had an operation.
Wonderful. So you're currently playing how many times a week, Dick?
About twice a week. You know, play at lunchtime. A bunch of guys that get together. They're basically anywhere from 14 years old to my age. There's one other guy I play with that's about 70. It's pretty good. What
do the young people say to you when they hear how old you are?
Most of them don't know. However, I notice that when I get knocked down and stuff, these people are real nice to me. They come and pick me up. So there is some concern about my age, but you know, I'm kind of fearless, I guess, when it goes for rebounds and stuff.
And you're not a 280-pound 7-footer who, over time, they tend to break down just by the sheer size and the weight bearing that they do. You're a petite person. You're about a 140 something.
Yeah, 145. When I was high school and college were playing, I was about 160. So I pretty much lost 15 pounds of muscle, which is part of the aging, which I'm not happy with.
Yeah, and fat, and subcutaneous fat.
Yeah, you know, and as a matter of fact, my area of research is how to rehydrate elderly people. So I'm working on it.
What is your, is there a way to access your information on the web yet?
Yeah, we do have a site, it's called pleasehydrate.me, Please Hydrate Me. And we have special water treatment equipment and ways to treat water that we think helps hydration.
And how about for Kelly, is there a way to contact you? I found you through LinkedIn. Do you have any other website?
I'm all word of mouth.
Your word of mouth.
Because I'm an athlete, I only work on athletes. So.
Okay. Do you have a nickname? Because I remember an email said no as in K-N-O-W, but...
I have a couple nicknames. Jolly is one of my favorites.
Jolly?
Yeah. Kelly knows a lot.
That's cool.
I pretend to be a doctor, so...
Okay, so here's the book that I completed this year. We're in 2015. So what happened was I started off writing this one, which is a big book, and it's got a lot of information in it, and I have maybe another 2 books ready to go in terms of information that I've written and researched. But while I was writing this, I asked an orthopedic surgeon for a testimonial on my book and my workout program. I do a thing called Maintenance Workout. My website is maintenanceworkout.com. I believe that the peaks and valleys of the average athlete, like the boxer who gets in this peak shape and then falls off and starts eating pizza and hanging out on the beach and shooting pool and then has to get back into shape, to me that's really hard to do. And it doesn't make sense on a health level. So I just decided when I was 22, you know, I went from 18, I made some gains by the time I was 22. I said, this is really a good place to stay. So rather than try to be superhuman from age 22 and go higher, I said, let's just stay here for the rest of my life. And I'm trying to do it as best I can at age 52. I was out this morning doing cartwheels after my workout and handstands, and I think I'm doing better than I could in high school, so that's an amazing thing. I'm not saying I can play tennis for 5 hours like I used to, my body can't do it, but in terms of agility and the way my mind works, the focus and the mindset, I think I'm better than I was in my 20s. But anyway, while I was writing the first book, I asked Dr. Bill Gallivan, who's an athletic orthopedic surgeon, 4th generation orthopedic surgeon, for a testimonial. And he says, hey, by the way, and he's a smart doctor, used to giving good advice, he said, by the way, for your next book, you should write one called The Aging Athlete. It's a new field in orthopedic medicine. So these aging athletes are getting parts replaced, and they see people like Dr. Gallivan for their surgery, so they actually come up with a whole new field of study called the aging athlete, and that's a recent thing. So I started this book knowing that. So Kelly, over to you. Tell us about, if you have a story, an anecdote that you could share about some athlete or even yourself about the process of the competition, the rehabilitation, the therapy, the mindset. What goes on with some of the people that you've interacted with?
That's a very open question.
Can you pick one person who comes in to see you, and do you know anything about their story?
I do. I have a wonderful client, the 92-year-old individual who at age 67 had open heart surgery, and they told him it was unsuccessful, he was going to die. So his wife said, I don't believe that. They moved to Santa Barbara to change their lifestyle from New York, and he gave up alcohol, sweets, and he changed his whole life pattern. He walked with his wife 5 days a week, changed his life dramatically, and I'm very proud to know this individual.
And how short a time frame did he change his life?
In a span of a year, once he moved here and we established, his wife just said, if you want to live, we're going to just change everything about your habits.
So she was the point person for
Yes.
that monitoring of the change.
She didn't believe the doctors could just predict his death like that, and very proud that, 40 years later, he's still with us.
So that's fascinating. So you were a part of the procedure of rehabilitation.
I massaged him for 20 years, and I'm very much part of his healthcare team, yes.
Wonderful. So do you see results when people, I imagine they come in, if they're in pain or discomfort or dysfunction, that they may get some immediate therapeutic things and things go back in line. So you see it instantaneously with your hands touching them.
Definitely.
Where do you start your massages? Do you start with checking in with how they're doing?
Of course, every person's different. So I actually ask for a wish list. I ask the individual, today, what is ideal for you? What do we want to target? And if it's just an ankle problem, I'm going to start with the ankle problem. I'm not going to go through a set routine. I'm going to be very specific of what they need.
I looked up the history of acupressure and back in 1986 when I was learning it, and they said in America, where we favor this high productivity and money, you know, the material world is very part of the Industrial Revolution and thereafter. I was looking up acupressure's history in America, not going back to India or Asia or wherever else people were massaging each other. And it said that we were doing acupressure on our horses for horse racing to take the knot out. So you have to take your whole fist into the knots of the racehorses, you know, the high-powered horses, and you have to take that in there and remove the knots. And then eventually people that were athletes got that. And then finally, probably by the 1980s and 90s and 2000s, more now than ever probably, regular people are using massage as an integral part of their life. Had you heard about the racehorses before?
Yes, I have. I have a friend who does work with racehorses. So I was fascinated, but the strength it requires, I think he's 6'2", 200 pounds. It makes more sense for him to work on horses than me.
To take a shoulder knot out, just, I mean, you'd have to have leverage, torque, and to do that. Over to Dick, do you do anything for therapy, or have you in your competition years, your recreation years, to rehabilitate yourself therapeutically, heal your muscles and bones, etc.?
I think that the big thing I try to do is always stretch a lot. And I notice with age I'm losing flexibility. And I notice older people, when they walk around, they seem to be more restricted. And I think that's because they just don't try to move more. They sit more, and of course the people sit at their desk all the time. So, like, I'll go to the Y and they'll need somebody to play, and I will not play until I go out and do about 15 minutes of stretching and running and stuff. And I think I've avoided injury that way.
Yeah, I think stretching is a really important part of the game. I started stretching before I go to sleep. About 10 years ago, I read that Rickey Henderson, the baseball player and the base stealer, he played for the Oakland A's for a long time, has many records, and baseball is his life. And so after he retired from the pro baseball league, he went and played kind of semi-pro, and he kept going. And they asked him the secret of his success, and he said, stretching before I go to sleep, not just during my baseball training and my lifting and running, but stretching before I go to sleep, and then if you wake up, you feel more loose. And so I started doing that, and that's 10 years ago, and it's only 2 to 5 minutes before I go to sleep, but it's a good way to set my body to say that, hey, the day is over now, the teeth are brushed, you're cleaned up, you're ready to go to sleep, so you just do your little stretches, you reconnect with something that's more pure than some of the other stuff that I've been doing in the rat race, and so that's been wonderful. So I encourage everyone out there to give that a try and to incorporate that in your daily wellness program. So now I want to talk a little bit about the aging athletes and what happened back in ancient Greece. So if you go back to the hunter-gatherers before ancient Greece, you had people who wanted to feel well. So if you were out hunting and gathering, you don't want to be gathering and digging up, lifting rocks up for grubs and digging up for roots if your back is bothering you, or if your hip has a hitch and you're giddy up, as they used to say. So you would probably have stretched or massaged people with your elbow, whatever you could do, leaned against the stump, whatever you had back in the day to make your body functional and feel well. And performance meant that you were going to be happy and well. It wasn't somebody was going to pay you or give you a gold medal for an Olympic competition. So later, when the early settled sedentary villages started to come around and they started having competitions, now there were rewards. You could get food, or you could get medals, or you could get blessed by the Caesar in the ancient days for your competitions. Or if you were a gladiator, you wouldn't get your arm chopped off or your life ended. So they started training. And so this performance idea wasn't just about providing food out of nature. It became this performance to earn rewards, to earn kudos, accolades, these types of things. So then that brings us from the ancient Greeks to the modern era, where you can make an NFL in your first year with a signing bonus. Just your average NFL player could make $2 million. And so now it's become this big drive for money, and the Williams sisters in tennis, people before them, There are fathers. Michael Chang, the tennis player, was at one time the youngest person to win the French Open. His father took him out and was feeding him balls because he knew this could mean a college education. So they put these things, these requirements on these athletes at a very young age. I'm not sure I'm for it, but in the material world and this idea of dog eat dog, there's nothing wrong with making a couple of million and then retiring when you're 22 if you're not disabled like the NFL people sometimes with these brain injuries or knee. I don't think I'd want $4 million to be limping the rest of my life. What do you think about that, Kelly?
Valid point. I have a friend who's an elite athlete who has decided as a personal trainer, he's put this out there, that he is not going to compete anymore after 30 years of racing because he doesn't want to look like some of his clients. I was like, wow.
So 30 years is a long time,
yeah,
too.
And
that's not a Russian gymnast for 6 or 8 years.
But there's a lot of my friends that are wondering, you know, what is the level of being able to compete at a good level without doing serious damage? And if you are limping through a race, is that going to help you to achieve happiness today, and how will you feel tomorrow? And you know, just thinking about the long-term effects.
How high is feeling well on your list? Is it number out of 1 to a 10 scale?
My health is number 1.
So, same with me. So I've always been, I came to this planet wired for wellness. When the coach in football, which amazingly enough in my ectomorph body, the thin body, I was playing football, and I had a sprained ankle one time, and the coach came up and says, go on back out there, Kreuter, go on out there. And I said, Coach, first of all, I think you're a great coach. Second of all, I have a sprained ankle. And third of all, I do not want to be hobbling, and I'm not getting paid for this, and the team's not going to miss me that much. I'm not the starter. So he says, okay, good point. He actually listened to a 16-year-old kid. I don't know how I could get through to these people, but they knew I wasn't the macho guy that was going to conquer Mount Everest or go up Iwo Jima and stick the flag in like the Marine. I'll support the Marines, I'll drive the boat, I'll feed them, I'll massage them, but I'm not going to go up and get bayoneted or get shot at while I'm going up to put a flag up there. I actually like wellness and I like living. Over to Dick, back in the Chicago days, people were scrapping back in the old days, knocking each other's noses and teeth around. So tell us how you came out of that and survived just the rough and tumble era.
Well, one thing is, when I grew up, there wasn't really organized sports. We didn't have Little League. We actually went out to the sandlot, picked our teams, and played ball. And there were problems. I grew up in an Irish-Italian neighborhood, and there were other neighborhoods that had, American Negro, black people, and there were problems. Usually economic separation between them.
Post-World War II.
Yes, and the blacks were still not being accepted in Chicago, really. Mm-hmm. And so once in a while there'd be a little rumble, and one time I got hit in the head with a bat, actually.
Ooh.
That hurt. Yeah.
Where in the head?
Over here.
Ooh.
Yeah. But it was okay, I think.
You didn't get knocked out?
Sometimes you get smarter, you know.
It reorganized your marbles. Did you get knocked out or just bleed or?
Stunned.
Stunned.
Yeah. But really, it was a good time. I never really felt afraid. And you know, when you grow up in an area where it's really cold in the winter and stuff, you don't know any better until you come to Santa Barbara. And so I think the thing is that it was self-organizing. The sports. You know, we played. Later, I left the south side of Chicago and grew up way south of Chicago, a little town called Steger, Illinois, right on the Cook County, Will County line, kind of the end of the line. There actually was a streetcar that ended there. I could get on that streetcar and go all the way downtown Chicago. Took about an hour.
How much was it when you first took it, do you think?
Oh, at that time it was probably 5 to 15 cents.
5 to 15 cents. What a deal for all those people paying $2.50 one way on your local bus.
Yeah. And
your grandkids are going to be paying $15 probably if the buses are still running. So what happens to these athletes? Did you play with any sports with guys that went to the college level or pro level?
Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, one of the guys I played with is probably known by people. His name was Jerry Colangelo. Yep. And Jerry is head of the American Basketball Olympic program right now. I went to high school with him. We played ball, and he went out to Phoenix and he owned the basketball team, the Phoenix Suns. He owned the Diamondbacks. He did pretty well for himself. So he's a big hero in our area. Mm-hmm. And where I grew up was, and I think you said you were near Indiana. You grew up in Indiana?
Oregon.
Oregon. It was Oh, someone else I just met said Indiana, right. So I grew up on the Indiana-Illinois border, and Indiana's a big state for basketball. It really is, and I was kind of influenced by that.
Larry Bird?
Yeah, yeah, and so we had some pretty good basketball players, and some of them actually made the pros. But in my time, it was only this fellow, Jerry Colangelo. But afterwards, we've had people make it.
How some of these aging athletes that were high performance and really went for it, how are they doing now in terms of their body and their mind? And also, are they still doing fitness activities for wellness?
The ones that I know, well, Jerry Colangelo, you'd see him on TV all the time. He doesn't look like he does much anymore. Mm-hmm. And we're the same age, mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting. So I would say no in that case. His son has been on TV now because he's a commentator for the NBA draft. And he looks like he's pretty good shape. He's probably in his 40s and 50s. So the ones I've known have not really continued to play.
Okay, now in terms of high performance and the accolades, Brian Bosworth, who was a standout high school and played a few years pro linebacker, he says that when the crowd was going nuts, you know, in college, some of these college crowds are 30 to 50,000 people, he said that lifted him up and he's never been so high. So if we can go around, if we have had one of those moments or seasons, if you can share what the feeling of euphoria and this high that you get from either your own competition and excelling and exceeding your goals, or from having the accolades from the fans, if you could share that.
Yeah, that's true. And, you know, people refer to it now as being in the zone. I didn't know it at the time, but there have been times when in basketball it's like, I'm in the zone. Mm-hmm. It's like Michael Jordan sometimes, you know, where you just can't miss.
He's in the zone a lot.
He's in the zone a lot. And I really don't know how to get into it, but boy, when you're in the zone, it's really great.
So how about any time, do you have any time that someone patted you on the back, or a girlfriend or the fans, that they just saw what you did and they said, boy, that was incredible, or they clapped for you?
You'll appreciate that. That happens at the Y. Yeah, the one time it was a breakaway for the basket, this guy, and I ran, it's a little bit like LeBron James when he catches up with somebody and swats it. I did that, and these guys looked at me and said...
And you're 5'8"?
5'8", 5'9", and I used to be able to jump for it. Anyway, they kind of looked at me and said, you just ruined that kid's career.
You were in your 70s when that happened?
It was just happened about a month ago.
77, and he's swatting the ball from a young dude on the go.
So that's kind of nice. It keeps you young.
Okay, fantastic. So over to Kelly, do you have any times where you had the euphoria in your competition, or even just going for a jog at the beach?
I'm a runner. 30 years of triathlon, so every time I cross the finish line, then
that's a big deal.
Yeah, you know, Ironman, you spend a year training for Ironman.
You've done Ironman.
I've done several.
Oh.
And when you finish that, you just get this glow, and people say, don't you get depressed? I'm like, no, there's always something great afterwards. I don't feel like, you know, that is the end of my, you know, athletic career. It's just like, okay, I'm going to try something different now. I'll try to do adventure race or mountain bike race or something different.
So you change your training during the year?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh,
how does that happen? Like this past year, maybe you could walk us through your training over the past year.
Well, the ocean racing season just started, so now I'm in the ocean 3 times a week, and there's
wetsuit?
different. No wetsuit. I consider that icing. I'm almost 50. I need the ice.
You need the ice.
So so different phases of the year are different times when you get out the mountain bike and you get out, you know, different sports and get kind of excited about the season. So Santa Barbara is year-round athletics. But
and there are hills here too.
Yes.
For bike and for running. We don't swim uphill too much unless we're going into the waves.
Well, we have a lot of dolphins, so it's trail swimming right now. And it's been really a great town to work out every single month. There's always something going on.
Have you ever been out at the distant point, whether it's a buoy or where the turnaround point is for your swim, and gotten a cramp or said, hey, I'm out of steam, I'm in trouble? Have you ever had anything like that?
Not necessarily swimming. There are certain times when you're biking up a big mountain, like on a mountain bike, and you're just grinding up a hill, and you're just like, wow, I don't know if I have to get off my bike or not. And that's a really struggle that you have within yourself. If you get off the bike and you have to walk bike, it's a no-no. Yeah.
You stay on the bike.
Yeah, you do everything you can.
So the cyclist always goes down with the bike. That's like the captain going down with the ship. So in this book, we have the Ironman victorious winner. And I'll show you a picture, but also on the front cover we have Gary, Indiana's largest citizen of 1959. And he's on the cover, and there he is at age 66. And I'll tell you in a minute a little bit about his story, but that's Gary, Indiana, 210-pound at age 18, 6'5" football player. And he's still fit. So he was the first athlete I bumped into. This was not an official interview. In 2009, I bumped into this gentleman who my sister told me was an NFL, former NFL guy. And I said to him, when you're seeing these folks at the golf tournaments and the commemoratives, Randy Beisler, so there he is in his San Francisco 49er uniform with his curly hair, and he was the #4 draft pick of 1966, which is pretty good for offense and defensive linemen, so he was a great athlete. So I said, when I met him, he said, I'm doing 5 days in the gym, so a 255-pound person, he was 68 or so when I met him. 5 days in the gym, he considers it his recreation. He doesn't consider it some hard thing that he has to do. He loves it, it's recreational. And then 2 days on the tennis court playing doubles tennis. He can't do singles tennis because of his knees now, but he's still fit. And my sister, who's my age, she is playing tennis against him, and she said he is very good, even with the hobbled knees. And you know, he's now 238 pounds, but he's a very gifted athlete at age 71, I think he is currently. So then we go from him to a triathlete. Here's another triathlete that I'm passing. So we got 2 triathletes in here. We got Mac McCluskey, who was the first official interview I did out in Park City, Utah, and they call him the little hard ass. So he's a similar build, maybe about 10 pounds heavier in his prime, but he played college and semi-pro football as a little guy, and they called him the little hard ass because he would take a lick and keep on ticking. But there's some of the athletes. We've got a football player, Sam Van Cunningham, who is the first player to play one of the first players to play in the civil rights football game, which is at the University of Alabama. And now we're going to go over to Charlie French. So there's Charlie French in his 80s, cross-country skiing. And he's a person who's been an athlete his whole life, but he's always been petite. So he figured out what he was really good at was endurance. So swimming, biking, running, cross-country skiing, probably walking, anything he can do. So an amazing athlete, and he's a World War II vet in his late 80s, and his kids are my age, but they're even more athletic than I am. He can beat them in anything endurance. Now you go to the grandkids. The grandkids are in their 20s. Guess who wins in anything endurance? This guy. So amazing stories from the aging athlete, and we'll come back more with some of your interesting topics found in the aging athlete.